Our next question comes from our friend Broken Radio, who says, good old-fashioned question, Ramsey. Well, I'll give you a good old-fashioned answer if I can. Basically, at the gym I train at, a few months ago, a new guy came in. Because he had one of those white-collar MMA matches coming up, after a couple of months he won his fight, which I'm happy for. But he has become annoyingly arrogant. Because of this, it's hard to train with him. When I hear him going off on how tough he is, let alone when he tries to nitpick on slight details that immediately make me think, or think that he knows what he's talking about. Is there a way I can bring this up to him? Okay. I would say one of the worst things that can possibly happen to you is to win your first fight, especially if it's your only fight. Man, one of the worst things that happened to me, I won my first MMA fight. Why is that a bad thing? Why is it a bad thing to win your first fight? Why? Because that fight's going to change you. Whether you win, whether you lose, whether you win in dominant fashion, whether you get the snot beaten out of you, all of those experiences are going to change you. And they're going to shape your opinion of the future. And they're going to give you some ideas which may or may not be true about what comes next. So I'll tell you the story about my first MMA fight. I was a professional kickboxer. I'd had a bunch of kickboxing matches under American kickboxing rules. I'd competed in Muay Thai as well. And I got a challenge on the internet from a guy with a few MMA fights under his belt. And he challenged me to an MMA fight. I'm not sure why he singled me out, but he said something along the lines of, oh, well, you're just a kickboxer. You don't know how to grapple. You don't know how to cage fight. And he was right. I didn't. I'd never wrestled at that point in my life. I'd never taken a jiu-jitsu class. I didn't know anything about grappling. I honestly didn't belong in a cage fight at that point in my life, but he taunted me. And I thought, well, I'm a pragmatic guy, so I will accept the challenge. And I'm going to knock him out, I thought. So I went in there. Cage fight starts. This guy comes out. He picks me up over his head and slams me on the ground, and he broke my foot. But I got up. As I was broken physically, but not broken in here. So I got up and I tied up with him. I got a collar tie and I started throwing shovel hooks to his liver, working for that liver shot KO. And when I hit him right there, he crumpled over. And so I grabbed him in a front headlock and I threw more and more heavy, bah! Shovel hooks right on the liver repeatedly. Man, I don't even know how many I threw. I threw a bunch. And he dropped to his knees. Boom, boom. And I would not stop. And he started tapping out. I looked up at the ref. The ref didn't see the tap, so I kept going. Boom! Front headlock. Liver shots right in the liver. Until those taps got so big, the referee ran over and stopped the fight. And I remember thinking, well, that wasn't too hard. I didn't have to learn how to wrestle to do that. I didn't need to know jiu-jitsu to do that. I just used my shovel hooks. You know, basic striking. And it got in my head a little bit. I started feeling really good about myself, in spite of the broken foot. And so I signed up for another one. I want to do that again. That's not too hard. I signed up for another professional MMA fight without ever having trained for the sport of MMA. And I don't remember the exact order of my fights, and my Sherdog record is not accurate. Yeah, all you guys looking up my Sherdog record saying, Ramsey, you're only 3-4. No, that's not accurate. That record is missing 10 fights. 10 fights are missing from that record, I'm going to tell you that. Man. But I had another fight against a guy who knew how to wrestle, a guy who had experience cage fighting, a guy who belonged in the cage at some point, and I remember feeling like, I'll box him, I'll jab him, I'll do this, I'll kick him, I'll go for a head kick knockout. So I land that jab, and as soon as I land that jab, just stiff, right on the eye, gave him a nice little shiner afterward, but as soon as I landed that jab, boom, he dropped under me, took me down with a double leg, climbed on top into mount, and started dropping elbows on my head. Boom! Boom! As I tried to cover up. But there's nowhere to move, nowhere to slip, nowhere to bob and weave. When you're being mounted in that high mount, like I mentioned before, that's a very, very dangerous position when you're on the bottom, the high mount. Understand the difference between high mount, low mount, and being an idiot and sitting on the guy's hips thinking you have mount. And in those moments, I remember thinking, well, I don't want to tap to strikes, because that'll make me look like a wimp, but I really, really want the referee to stop this right now. And eventually, he did. And I walked out of that thinking, wow, that's not the way I wanted it to go. And I was awakened to the wonderful world of grappling. Before, I hated the idea of grappling. Ew, touching another man, yuck, ew, that's so lame. It's not what I'm interested in. I want to strike, I want to punch, I want to kick, I want to knee, I want to drop elbows. But I was awakened to the possibilities. Whoa, there is this whole other dimension to fighting that I know nothing about, but I'm going to learn everything. And from that moment on, my friends, I set out to learn everything there is about everything about fighting. That was a life-changing experience. I kind of wish that would have happened in my first fight, though. It sounds kind of odd saying I kind of wish I would have lost my first fight. I wish I would have been awakened sooner, if you will, because, man, if you spend your life sleeping, dreaming a lie for so long, and then you wake up when you're old and realize, oh, man, where did my whole life go? It's gone. You don't get that back. The one weakness we all share with Superman, time, the limiting factor. A wimp can train to become a warrior, my friends, if he has enough time. Man, I get so many questions from people saying, hey, do you think I'm too old to train? No, you're not too old to train. If you're alive, you can train. And then similar questions, do you think I'm too old to go pro? And my answer to that, you know what? If that's what you want, put in the work. Work with some experienced professionals in your area. And if you can't find any in your area and you're serious, go out of your area and find some. Talk to them about it. Work with them. And, yeah, they should give you an honest assessment. Find honest people to work with, and they'll give you an honest assessment. So, Broken Radio, what do you do about your friend? Your friend has this situation where he has fallen into the trap of believing himself to be awesome with one fight. I've said this many times, your first 10 fights are going to suck. They're going to suck, even the ones you win. That first fight that I won, it sucked. Looking back on that fight now, if I had the video, I don't. Funny story about how that happened. But if I had the video of that first fight, and if I was able to watch that, I would just cringe like, oh, I did that, man. What was I thinking? Oh, I'm so much better now. What? Yeah. Your first 10 fights are going to suck because you are going to suck. They're going to suck technically. They're going to suck because of the huge anxiety dump that you're not used to handling. They're going to suck for every reason that you're not familiar with, because of lack of experience. So what do you do about your friend? who's still in that sucking phase, but he doesn't know that he sucks yet because he won a fight. Well, here's the thing. You don't do anything. You don't have to do anything. That's his problem. Now, if you were a real friend, yeah, you could try to wake him up by beating the crap out of him. Am I recommending that you do that? No, not necessarily. But if you're able to teach him the important lesson that Mr. Miyagi teaches us in The Karate Kid Part 1. I think Mr. Miyagi was a lousy karate teacher, but a good life lesson teacher. He was talking to Daniel LaRusso about how he, Mr. Miyagi, got bullied and beaten up when he was younger, back in Okinawa. This surprised Daniel LaRusso, and he said, "But you knew karate. How did they beat you up?" To which Mr. Miyagi responded, "Someone always knows more." How true, my friends, how true. Someone always knows more. No matter how good you are, there's always somebody better. Always. Especially in combat sports, because there are so many variables. You might be good at whatever skill sets you have, but there's another guy who is the rock to your scissors, who is the paper to your rock, who's got your number on any given day. And if you're a regular guy, man, there are so many pros out there who would spank you any way they want, any time they wanted. Your friend may consciously know that he sucks right now. He may consciously know and be aware of his lack of experience. And by he sucks, I don't mean that he doesn't have a future in mixed martial arts. I mean, this guy, for all I know, could end up being a UFC champion if he sticks with it. But I've seen this from time to time, the one and done type who gets that one win, feels good about it, but then they're like, do I really want to do that again? Nah. I want to be undefeated. Man, undefeated means nothing without a career behind it. Man, there are few people, few and far between, who have earned the title undefeated. Rocky Marciano, for example. Man, that man with his whole career behind him. That was a man with bragging rights. But one thing I've learned, the people who really have the bragging rights, the people who earn that, they don't brag. So what I'm seeing right now from this question, relative to my own personal experience with people like that, and I've met people like that. I've been the guy like that after that first fight. Like, yeah, I won, I'm awesome. I don't need to train. Until the awakening, the great awakening. It kind of seems like an us and them situation. You versus him. Enmity, as it seems. He puts himself up in this position where it seems like he's saying, I'm better than you. That's the great sin of pride, my friends, where we communicate this idea that we are better than other people. Not better fighters or better athletes, but better humans. And that's not right. That doesn't help. Pride leads to the fall. Man, there's a pride cycle. It starts with prosperity. You know, that thing we all want. We want money, we want fame, we want success, we want comfort, we want joy, we want happiness, we want all the good stuff. But when we get it, when we get what we think that we want, what happens? We start to feel important. Oh, look at all this stuff I got. Look at all these accomplishments I've earned. Look how comfortable I am. I must be special. And then eventually that can lead, if it goes unchecked, to this idea, I must not only be special, I must be better than him or her or them over there. And then what happens when we believe that lie, that beautiful lie? Well, eventually somebody who actually is better objectively comes along and humbles us. Or we are humbled by life itself, by the universe itself, throwing some unpredictable act of God or nature upon us that we have no control over. And we are brought down to the depths of humility because we realize how weak we really are. That this body of flesh and blood has its limits. Its finite limits. Not only limits of time like Superman, but limits of the flesh like a mortal human. That the strength of my hand really isn't that strong at all compared to what else is out there in this vast, infinite universe, my friends. I'm looking out at a lake right now. Lake right over there. Massive body of water. It looks peaceful. It looks tranquil. But at the bottom of that lake, if I was standing there, at the bottom of that lake, the sheer pressure and force of that water alone would crush me. Even if I could breathe underwater somehow, that force would crush me. And that's kind of humbling to think about. How many ways there are to just die like that. You might be in a position where you feel you need to humble your friend because you don't like the interactions you're having. But I will offer you this, perhaps, my friend Broken Radio, find a way to humble yourself. That's a hard thing to hear, especially when we're looking outward, seeing something that seems objectively wrong with someone else that is bothering us, that is causing us duress. But look inward instead. Look at this man, the one on the inside of you. And ask yourself, how can I fix this instead of that out there? Just like jiu-jitsu, just like wrestling, just like fighting, we have very limited control over the other person, but we have maximum control over ourselves. It is very difficult to physically move a person who does not want to be moved, who is violently resisting you, but you can easily move yourself around that person. You want to arm drag somebody? What is the arm drag? Is it using brute force to move that person? A little bit. They might move a tiny bit, maybe 20% max, but you're going to move that other 80%. You're going to move your body around them. You're going to pull yourself around that arm to make that angle. That's what you're going to do. Take that principle into your personal life. Move yourself instead of trying to move the other guy. Like the story of the sun and the wind, who tried to take the man's coat off, and the wind blew and blew and blew, and the more he blew, the tighter the man clutched his coat to him, and then the sun came out and won the bet very easily by simply shining. And when he did, the man took his coat off, for he was warmed by the sun. Let that be a lesson to you from the ancient Greek teller of tales, Aesop. He had a few good stories in there. That was one of them, I think. So humble yourself before you are forced to be humble. Circumvent that pride cycle. If we could just have that prosperity without the pride, man, we'd be set. What's the easy way to do that? Give something back, man. Give something back instead of keeping it all for yourself. Anyway, great question. Good luck with your friend. Thanks for watching. Now get out there and train.